Hi, oh God. I'm Kel. My pronouns are they, them. I'm non-binary. And I'm here to talk about kind of the act of creation, so being trans in youth theatre, whether you're like a member of the youth theatre, like one of the members of your youth theatre is trans, or if you have a facilitator who is trans, or if you were trans. It's Trans Awareness Week. I hope you're all trans and aware. Or just aware of me. And also just welcome to the Symposium. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really delighted to be here. The last time that I spoke, I had a more grown-up next to me. And now I am the grown-up, which I don't love. I joined youth theatre, Activate Youth Theatre at the tender age of 10. And it's just been kind of life-changing. And that's kind of a story for everybody. I assume all of you are aware of that because you're here. You kind of understand. It would be a waste of time to explain to you what kind of youth theatre means to people and to the young people there. I haven't actually left youth theatre since, and I've just been kind of learning my way around being a facilitator, playwright mentor. I kind of do just everything because I love it all. Every aspect of it is amazing. But yes, preaching to the choir here. Yeah, I'm going to try and keep this general enough because there's just a lot to talk about. You can read my thesis if you want online, but I could be here forever talking about that. But getting into the theory of it as well, like a little bit pointless for you because you're generally in a practical kind of a setting. But yeah, I'm going to try and keep this as general as possible so that it can apply to the young people, but also to facilitators or just if you meet a trans person in general. We're out there in the shadows. Also, if we have time for the panel at the end, or also the conversation hub tomorrow, you can ask questions. Please ask the questions. I know that everybody is so polite and lovely and deathly afraid of offending or just being terrible or dumb. But that's why I'm here. Please ask the questions because I would much rather you ask them to me instead of maybe in a setting that's maybe not as conducive. And then, yes, but absolutely. I've also heard it all before. All of it. All of it, just everything. Anyway, and also after if a question comes to you in like the dead of night, 3 weeks from now, you can like message me on Instagram or anywhere you can reach out because that's how questions come to me as well. So, yeah, youth theatre is great. We know this. It's a super welcoming space for everybody, like everybody speaks about it as being a really welcoming place and somewhere that they found themselves or that they found a community that they can really connect with that maybe they don't find at school or at home or in other places. And honestly, if you're a trans young person in a youth theatre, that's just an extension of that. I guess it's not as unfamiliar to you as you might first think it is. It's that same kind of feeling of belonging, possibly a little bit more weight to it in that, I mean, for a few hours a week when I was a teenager, I would come into a space and somebody would call me by my name. It's like, just thinking about it, it's kind of absurd that once a week for 2 hours I got called by my name. And that language kind of didn't grade up against me. I was able to just kind of exist in a space and not have to think about it, actually. I didn't want to have to think about it. I just wanted to be Kel and just not think about all the crap that comes with that. I want to do zip zap zoom or whatever. You know, like just call me Kel and let's get on with it. So it is a little bit heavier in that way, in the significance of like that comfort, that kind of lighthouse in the middle of the week, and always wanting more and being really sad that youth theatre ends and having to go back maybe into a space where people don't know that I'm Kel or people know and don't care. But I've always found that people care in youth theatre, which is great. Like I think that people are doing more than they already realize. And I've witnessed that as well as experiencing it. You know, I came out as trans in like 2019, publicly to everybody in a blog post, because I was like, I'm not having this conversation a million times, so I'm just going to send a link. And that went about as well as you might imagine. People were like, you can't do that to me. But since that, and being able to kind of come out, and I started on testosterone for a while, and I changed my name and I changed my pronouns. The kind of comfort in the youth theatre as well with the young people has been interesting to watch. People who I would have kind of seen myself in and been like, oh, I wonder, eventually got comfortable enough when they kind of saw me being out there, or just like, it's not a big deal. It's actually nothing. It's got nothing to do with the workshop. It's got nothing to do with like the conversations that we have or anything. I'm just there in the space. They felt comfortable enough to kind of come forward and be like, actually, you know, I go by Jimothy, and I would like you to call me that, please. And we're like, yeah, that's fine. Absolutely, welcome, Jimothy. And everybody, like all of the young people they're very knowledgeable. They're very hip and down with it, as you might expect, and they kind of go with it, and they're very respectful. And we're able to have conversations like that in youth theatre. I think that we're always able to have conversations like that. People underestimate, I know we don't underestimate young people, but I think that they're underestimated for their amount of empathy and their understanding. So yeah, it's like, it's really good, it's important, it's wonderful. And I think that there's a lot of progress towards just that being a safe kind of environment for people anyway. Yes. I'm also just sometimes pointing, no, I've said that already, sorry. I also know that it seems like there are a lot more trans people than ever before. Like we all emerged at once. Like, you know, like the cicadas in summer that they come out and they just scream and then they disappear. But actually, it's not that. It's more that they're more comfortable to say it now. Because I've known that I was trans for 10 years and I didn't say it until 2019. So it's just that people are able to express it more freely now, which I think is great. And that these kind of seemingly before insurmountable changes, or like these things that we thought that we could never say, we now can, which is so great that you can just kind of say that and get that off your chest and not have to feel like I know that you're going there to act, but that that you can be yourself and step into a character rather than being a character already trying to step into another one. So I'm also going to say, like, kind of my first big tip thing, because we were talking about inclusion and diversity kind of this past week. I was wondering how I was going to frame this talk, and I was like, I don't know how to not overshare and also not like make it too simple or like too complex. And then I was doing inclusion and diversity training, and they were talking about removing barriers, and I was like, that's just the best way to kind of look at it. It's like you're walking into a space and you're like, what are just the little barriers that make this space more difficult than it needs to be? If you're trans and you're walking into a building, what are you kind of looking at that's going to be like, that's kind of not inviting, or that's not, that makes me kind of maybe not want to be here, or it's just more uncomfortable than I want it to be. The first kind of barrier is actually not for trans people. I'm going to sound a little bit angelic here. Do not be afraid. It's the thing I see most often is that cis people, so people who aren't trans, are so terrified, and you don't need to be, of hurting trans people, or of hurting the young people, because obviously you're there because you love the young people and you want them to be happy and welcome. Please don't be afraid. You're unfortunately contractually obligated as a human being to make mistakes. It was in the small print, which is tragic, I know, but you're just going to have to do it from now until the end of time. And you're going to mess up. I'm sure that you've done it with cis people's pronouns or names, that you've called them the wrong one. I do that all of the time to cis people. Like, it's a thing in language. Your brain moves faster than your mouth sometimes. And all that you have to do there like, if you say someone's name wrong or if you use the wrong pronoun, is, oh, sorry, he. And then you just keep going. That's all you have to do. It doesn't have to be earning back their respect or worrying about how much you hurt them. Maybe it did hurt a little bit in the moment, but also if someone's come out to you as trans, it's a sign that they trust you, and that they're happy to share that vulnerable part of themselves with you. They know you. They're not going to lay their soul out like that in front of you if they don't have to. So don't worry if you mess up and you move on. People hurt each other, and it's okay. We kind of choose who we get to be hurt by and who hurts us, and who we hurt, and we just embrace the forgiveness there and move on and trust that the love there and the respect makes up for that, more than makes up for it. So don't worry. Do not be afraid. Yes. So the other kind of barriers as well that I was kind of thinking about was the kind of weirdness of having to come out in a space. Maybe as a facilitator, it kind of applies more to, but also to young people that maybe come to events like this where they're stepping outside of their youth theatre, where maybe the other members kind of know what the deal is. And it can be kind of weird. You're kind of judging the vibe of a room. You're wondering, like, am I going to come out here or am I just going to not say? Because, you know, you're like maybe in and out to schools giving workshops. Maybe you're going to different events. And you don't know how that's going to be taken always. That can be kind of stressful to walk in, especially if you're maybe clocked as looking a bit different. People pick up on that, and they aren't always super kind. So that can be kind of a thing to keep in mind that maybe people don't think about, because, you know, you trust people. You trust them to be kind of strong and to be independent and to be capable of doing their job, and they can be all those things, but also they can be extremely vulnerable in those situations, that in a way that you weren't maybe thinking of, because you're like, why would anyone ever say that awful thing to you? But they do, and it's not just from maybe like teenagers or kids who are like obviously not saying it out of malice. It can also be from adults who are there, like who have hired you to kind of come in. So I guess the barrier there is to be aware of that kind of maybe situation that somebody might be walking into. And then the way to remove that barrier would be to have a support there with that person, so that maybe a trans person isn't walking in alone, that they have somebody with them, another facilitator, who can kind of be there to back them up, and just to have that kind of support to go through, and not feel like they're being singled out in that way. Because, yeah, it's difficult to, again, coming out is like a very personal thing. And if I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't, as much as I do, but my pronouns are they, them, and people kind of pick up on that quite quickly. So, yes. Some more barriers as well. This sounds very doom and gloom, but it's actually, these are, I know, but these are smaller things that make a really significant difference in somebody's life. They don't have to cost a lot of money. They don't have to take a huge amount of thought or consideration. It's just small things that let somebody know that they're welcome in the space, that they're wanted there, that they've been thought about a little bit. That just takes that pressure off. Because when you move through a world that's kind of not made for you or doesn't really think about you, that makes a world of difference. You just don't have to think about it, which is just what you want. You don't want to have to think about, like, okay, when I go in here, where can I use the bathroom? So that's one thing, is like, in my building, is there gender neutral bathrooms, or are they gendered? And if they are gendered, do I have tampons in the men's restroom? You know, do I, like, Do I have different kind of spaces for people who are like changing maybe in a show? Is there a space where if there's a trans actor, be they a young person or otherwise, can kind of just go off and change and not have to change in front of other people if they don't want to? Just small things like that, thinking about the gendered spaces in your building, in what way they're gendered, and if they need to be. Yeah, because sometimes that's a huge stressor for people who just want to pee. They just want to pee, maybe. And also just being vocal about your support. It doesn't have to be in a big way. It can be small things like having a poster up in your building, just like maybe a belong to poster if they're an LGBT organization who are great. They work with queer people and celebrating things like it's Trans Awareness Week. So just even like a post up on your social media so that people can see that, or even just the plays that you do. If you're picking a play for your youth theatre that maybe it's got a trans character in it, or maybe it's by a trans writer. Just those small things that like I've been thought about, I've been considered, and it's actually fine. It's no big deal. It's barely even a talking point, because actually the worst thing is all of the attention, which is also why if you mess up a name or a pronoun, it's better to just do the kind of quick apology and moving on, because always drawing attention to the fact, the thing that makes you different can be really uncomfortable, especially when you're a teenager. Oh my God, they do not want anyone looking at them ever, just, so like bringing more attention to them, yeah, it's not good. It's just the worst. I've seen it. So just this kind of smaller considerations make such a huge difference. And I know that loads of people in here are doing that already. These are things that you've probably already thought of or seen spoken about, or that the young people have brought to your attention because they're class. They're so good with these things and so careful. So I know I might be repeating things that you already know, but I'm happy to get into kind of deeper detail as well in the panel or on the Conversation Hub tomorrow. But thank you so much for listening. You're all amazing. Trans and aware.